In a quiet American town where nothing ever happens, a man lived alone. His name was Daniel Harper. Farmer. Neighbor. Ghost of a past he tried to bury beneath sweat and soil, with nothing but his land, his silence, and a secret he'd spent years burying beneath the soil. But one morning, the FBI came to his door. Guns drawn. Sirens silent. And before sunrise, Daniel Harper was in handcuffs. FBI badging him, neighbors watching, his dog barking, cuffs slamming shut. The charges? Theft. Assault. Conspiracy. The evidence? Circumstantial. The truth? They had the wrong man. But this wasn't just a case of mistaken identity. It was a setup. And what he did after they let him go, shook the entire nation. He didn't run. He didn't hide. He went back to the one place they'd never expect. The fields where the truth was buried under hay bales and lies. Because Daniel Harper wasn't just going to clear his name. He was going to bring the real criminal to justice. Even if it destroyed the town that once called him family.
The early morning fog clung stubbornly to the quaint streets of Millbrook, a town so small that its heartbeat was measured by the slow chime of the old clock tower in the town square. The mist wove through the branches of giant oaks and maples lining the sidewalks, wrapping the town in a soft, ethereal blanket. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and pine, mingling with the faint aroma of fresh brewed coffee drifting from Marlene's diner. It was a place where everyone knew each other's names, their histories woven tightly like the patchwork quilts that adorned many front porches, each square telling a story passed down through generations. In the center of this peaceful tableau lived Daniel Harper, a man whose life was as ordinary as the town itself. Daniel's small, weathered farmhouse sat on the edge of Millbrook's outskirts, surrounded by fields dotted with golden hay bales stacked neatly, their sharp scent mingling with the cool morning air. The crunch of gravel underfoot, the distant crowing of roosters, and the soft rustle of wind through the wheat fields created a soundtrack of rural calm. Every dawn, Daniel could be found tending to his modest crops or sipping coffee by the window, watching the world wake slowly around him, his breath fogging the glass in the chilly air. Despite the serenity, Daniel harbored a restless gaze, as if the quietness of his surroundings masked a deeper turmoil. His blue eyes, often fixed on the horizon where the sun rose in streaks of pink and orange, betrayed a mind that wandered far beyond the simple rhythms of farm life. But to the people of Millbrook, Daniel was just the dependable neighbor, the man who fixed the broken fence or lent a hand without question, his weather-beaten hands a testament to years of honest labor. That morning, the peace shattered like glass underfoot. The sound of heavy boots on gravel echoed sharply toward the farmhouse. A convoy of unmarked FBI vehicles rolled in, their tinted windows reflecting the rising sun with an almost menacing glare. Agents moved with purpose, their faces set and unreadable beneath the brim of dark hats and the folds of their jackets. Daniel stood on his porch, the crisp hay scent filling his lungs, confusion knitting his brow as the agents approached, the quiet hum of nature suddenly replaced by an unnatural tension. "Daniel Harper?" an agent called out, voice firm but not unkind, cutting through the morning stillness. He nodded, heart pounding in his chest as if it might burst. The hay bales behind him cast long shadows in the dawn light, a stark contrast to the unyielding black boots advancing toward him. "Yes, that's me," he replied, voice steady despite the shock tightening his throat. "You're under arrest," the agent said, handcuffs gleaming ominously in the soft light, the metal cold and unforgiving. "We believe you're involved in the recent string of crimes in the area." Daniel's protests were drowned by the clatter of cuffs snapping shut and murmurs rising from neighbors gathering at the edges of their yards, their faces etched with disbelief and a growing sense of fear. He was the wrong man. But this was only the beginning of a nightmare that would unravel the quiet fabric of Millbrook. Before the FBI's sudden intrusion, Daniel's life was a quiet rhythm of routine and small joys. His farmhouse was a sanctuary, filled with the earthy smell of aged wood, the faint sweetness of dried herbs hanging from hooks in the kitchen, and the comforting aroma of old leather-bound books stacked haphazardly on shelves. Every evening the sun cast a warm glow through the cracked windows, illuminating the stacks of books and faded photographs that told stories of a family long gone, faces smiling from sepia-toned frames, frozen moments in time. Daniel's days began before dawn, waking to the crow of a distant rooster and the rustle of hay as he moved through his fields. The hay bales were both his livelihood and his solace, stacked meticulously as symbols of his connection to the land. Each bale carried the scent of summer's end and the promise of seasons yet to come, the dry straw crackling softly underfoot as he worked. The gentle breeze carried the faint buzz of cicadas, the rich soil cool beneath his boots. Despite the outward normalcy, Daniel carried a secret burden. Years ago, he had been wrongfully accused of a crime in another town, a shadow that had never fully lifted from his soul. He had worked hard to rebuild, to bury that past beneath the golden layers of hay and soil, hoping the earth's patience would erase the scars time could not. His neighbors trusted him, unaware of the heavy weight of suspicion that still lingered in the quiet moments behind his calm exterior. His closest companion was his aging dog, Rufus, whose grizzled snout and gentle eyes mirrored Daniel's own quiet resilience. Together they shared the loneliness of the fields and the comfort of familiar routines, Rufus's soft panting and the rhythm of his footsteps a steady presence in the vast openness. When the FBI arrived, it felt like a cruel echo of the past crashing into his fragile peace. Daniel's protests fell on deaf ears, his pleas drowned by the weight of official suspicion and the cold efficiency of the law. The hay bales outside, once symbols of peace and harvest, now seemed like silent witnesses to an injustice that threatened to uproot everything he had built. After his arrest, Daniel found himself confined in a sterile interrogation room, the harsh fluorescent lights flickering overhead with a relentless buzz that made the silence unbearable. His wrists ached from the cold steel of the handcuffs, the metal biting into his skin, and the faint scent of hay and earth was replaced by the sterile, acrid tang of antiseptic that clung to the air like a shroud. Across the table, Agent Miller stared, her eyes sharp and unyielding, probing for any sign of weakness. "We have evidence linking you to the thefts and assaults around Millbrook," she said, sliding photographs across the table with a deliberate motion. Images of masked figures, stolen goods, and broken locks lay spread before him. Daniel's heart sank. None of the faces resembled his own, and the shadows in the pictures seemed to mock his innocence. "I wasn't there," Daniel insisted, voice steady but desperate, the words barely a whisper under the weight of disbelief. "You have the wrong man." Outside, the town murmured with confusion and creeping fear. Rumors spread like wildfire, fueled by anxiety and the human need to find someone to blame. The hay bales in the fields, once peaceful markers of harvest, became a focal point of whispered speculation, a place where stolen items had been found according to local gossip, twisting the landscape into a stage of suspicion. Daniel's mind raced. How could he prove his innocence when the evidence seemed stacked against him? The agents were convinced, their focus unyielding and merciless. The hay bales, the fields, the quiet farmhouse, all twisted into a narrative that painted him guilty beyond doubt. As days passed, the weight of suspicion pressed down, threatening to crush the fragile hope Daniel clung to like the last thread of a fraying rope. Yet, beneath the doubt, a flicker of defiance sparked in his chest. He would not be broken by false accusations. Somewhere beyond the haze of mistrust, beyond the heavy shadows of doubt, the truth waited, and he would find it, no matter the cost. Weeks later, new evidence surfaced. A security camera from a nearby town had captured a shadowy figure near the scene of the crimes, a figure whose build and gait differed markedly from Daniel's. The FBI was forced to release him, the cuffs falling away like chains from his wrists, the cold metal leaving a lingering sting on his skin. The scent of hay and fresh earth greeted him as he stepped back onto his farm, the familiar landscape both comforting and alien in the wake of his ordeal. Daniel's release should have been a moment of pure relief, but the reality was far more complex. The town's eyes still lingered with suspicion, their whispers a low hum in the background, like the rustling of dry straw in a breeze. The hay bales, once symbols of his peaceful existence, now felt like silent judges, their golden sides watching him with quiet accusation. But Daniel was not the man to retreat into silence or despair. The injustice had reignited a fire within him, a fierce determination to reclaim not just his name but the peace of the town he loved. He knew the real culprit was still out there, hiding behind shadows and misdirection, and he would not rest until the truth was unearthed. As the sun dipped behind the trees, casting long shadows over the fields and painting the sky with hues of amber and violet, Daniel made a decision. He would uncover the truth, not just to clear his name but to protect the town that had become his home. The hay bales would be key, the place where secrets lay buried, waiting to be unearthed and brought to light. The wrong man was free, but what he would do next would shock the nation and change Millbrook forever. Daniel's first steps after release were cautious but determined, each footfall crunching softly in the cool evening air. The night was alive with the chorus of crickets and the rustle of leaves stirred by a gentle breeze. The scent of crushed grass and fresh hay filled his nostrils, the farm feeling alive with the quiet whisper of secrets waiting to be discovered. He moved toward the fields where the bales were stacked in neat rows, their golden sides glowing softly under the silver light of the moon, casting long, shifting shadows. He ran his hand over one bale's rough surface, feeling the sharp, dry texture beneath his fingertips, the strands of straw brittle yet resilient. Somewhere among these stacks lay clues the FBI had missed, evidence that could expose the real criminal hiding in plain sight. Daniel's eyes scanned the shadows between the bales, searching for anything out of place. A glint of metal, a footprint, a scrap of fabric. He recalled the strange footprints near the barn, the faint glimmer of metal he'd seen among the hay during his last day before arrest. Details that now took on new significance. Armed with a flashlight that cut through the darkness with a narrow beam and a growing resolve, Daniel began to dig carefully at the base of one bale, the dry hay rustling with each movement, delicate yet stubborn. Hours passed, the silence broken only by the soft scrape of his hands and the occasional bark of Rufus, alert to the night's mysteries and ready to warn of any approaching danger. At last, his fingers brushed against something solid, a small, weathered box, its edges worn and stained by time and soil. Heart pounding with a mixture of fear and hope, Daniel pried it open. Inside lay a collection of items, a torn letter, its ink faded but still legible, a set of old keys, their metal cold and heavy, and a small device, intricate and puzzling, its purpose unclear but ominous. The letter hinted at plans and betrayals that reached far beyond Millbrook, a tangled web of deceit and greed. This discovery was the first thread in a tangled web, and Daniel knew he had to follow it. The hay bales had hidden more than crops. They concealed the truth that could change everything, and he was ready to unravel it. Despite his discovery, Daniel's path was anything but smooth. The town's suspicion lingered like a thick fog, seeping into conversations and glances. While the FBI kept a watchful eye, their doubts far from dispelled. Daniel's every move was shadowed by skepticism, the weight of accusation hanging heavy like a storm cloud. At Marlene's diner, whispers followed him like ghosts, voices dropping to hushed tones as he entered. "Are you sure he's innocent?" a voice muttered over steaming coffee. "If not him, then who?" Daniel met these accusations with quiet firmness, his gaze steady and calm despite the swirling storm within. "I'm going to find out," he said, voice steady, but inside the weight of isolation pressed heavily, a cold knot tightening in his chest. The box's contents raised more questions than answers. The letter hinted at a conspiracy involving a local business owner, someone trusted and respected in the community, a man whose charm masked a darker agenda. But approaching this person risked danger and alienation, a leap into unknown territory fraught with risk. Meanwhile, the device puzzled him. Its small size and intricate components suggested something technological, perhaps a tracker or a bomb trigger. Daniel's hands trembled as he examined it, the scent of oil and metal sharp in the cool night air, the device cold and unyielding like the secrets it guarded. Rufus growled lowly, sensing the tension and unease, his instincts sharpening with the threat that loomed. Daniel knew he was walking a fine line between uncovering truth and stirring a hornet's nest, where every hay bale and shadowed corner of Millbrook held secrets, some better left buried. But Daniel's resolve hardened as the night deepened. He couldn't back down now. The wrong man was free, yes, but he intended to set things right, even if it meant standing alone against the storm that threatened to consume him. As Daniel delved deeper into the mystery, unlikely friendships began to form. Claire, a young journalist with a sharp eye and a relentless spirit, approached him cautiously one bright afternoon at the hayfields. Her auburn hair caught the sunlight, casting fiery highlights that seemed to match her determined gaze. Her voice was steady but curious, carrying the crispness of autumn air. "I've been following the case," Claire said, glancing at the hay bales around them. "There's more to this story than you're being told. Maybe we can help each other." Daniel hesitated, memories of betrayal making trust difficult. Yet something in Claire's earnest gaze stirred a flicker of hope, a chance at an ally in a world that had turned against him. Together, they pored over the letter's cryptic lines and the device's strange mechanisms, their fingers tracing the faded ink and tangled wires. Claire's connections in town and her access to records uncovered inconsistencies in the official narrative, cracks in the carefully constructed facade. The business owner named in the letter had a history of shady dealings, masked behind a friendly smile and a respected reputation. Their partnership grew, forged in the quiet moments between hay bales and whispered conversations under the fading light. Claire's presence brought a new energy, a spark of courage that Daniel desperately needed to face the mounting challenges. At night they met near the stacks, the scent of dry hay surrounding them like a protective cloak. The world hushed save for the rustle of leaves and distant calls of night birds. Here, amid the golden bales, plans took shape, plans that would shake Millbrook to its core and bring the hidden truths to light. The days that followed tested Daniel in ways he hadn't imagined. The weight of false accusation and the burden of truth bore down on him. Yet beneath it all, a quiet strength took root, growing like the resilient stalks of wheat in his fields. One evening, as a storm rolled in, thunder rumbling like distant drums across the sky, Daniel stood alone among the hay bales, rain soaking the dry stalks and turning the earth to thick, clinging mud. The cold droplets stung his face and slicked his hair, but he welcomed the cleansing, the storm washing away doubt and fear. He thought of Rufus, waiting faithfully by the farmhouse, and of Claire's determined voice over the phone, steady and unwavering. The fear and anger that had once threatened to consume him now fueled his resolve, sharpening his focus like a blade. Daniel reached into the box again, the torn letter crinkling softly in his hands despite the damp. He spoke aloud to the night, a vow to the silent hay bales around him, their golden forms swaying in the wind. "I won't let this stand. Not for me, not for Millbrook." The storm's fury mirrored the turmoil in his heart, but as the rain softened and the clouds parted, so did his doubts. He was no longer the man crushed under suspicion, but a force of will, ready to confront the darkness hiding in plain sight. The hay bales, witnesses to secrets and strength, stood firm, a symbol of resilience in the face of betrayal, their steadfastness inspiring his own. The investigation reached a critical juncture when Daniel and Claire uncovered proof linking the business owner directly to the crimes: stolen goods. Hidden among the hay bales, the device a trigger for a planned explosion meant to cover the tracks and erase evidence. The implications were chilling, but confronting this truth came with consequences. The owner's influence cast a long shadow over Millbrook, and threats began to seep into Daniel's life like poison. One night, as he returned to the farm under a sky blanketed with stars, he found a warning scrawled in dark, jagged letters on a hay bale near the barn: "Stop digging or pay the price." The scent of fresh hay mixed with the acrid sting of fear hung thick in the night air. Rufus growled at the darkness, alert to unseen dangers lurking in the shadows, his eyes glowing with protective fire. Daniel's resolve wavered for a moment, the weight of the threat pressing hard against his chest. Yet the betrayal in the town's silence burned hotter than fear. If he gave up, the wrong man would remain shackled by suspicion, and the true criminal would prevail. With Claire's unwavering support, Daniel steeled himself. The hay bales that once seemed like silent judges now stood as battlegrounds, their golden faces hiding the key to justice and redemption. The crisis had come, and Daniel was ready to face it, whatever the cost, whatever the danger. The confrontation with the business owner shook Millbrook to its core. Arrests followed swiftly, and the FBI, now convinced of Daniel's innocence, apologized publicly in the town square, their voices carrying over the murmurs of the gathered crowd. The hay bales, once symbols of suspicion and doubt, became emblems of revelation, places where truth had been buried and finally unearthed. Daniel's name was cleared, but the scars remained etched in the wary glances and hesitant greetings of neighbors. The town's whispers faded slowly, replaced by cautious respect and the tentative rebuilding of trust. The scent of hay in the fields returned to a symbol of peace and renewal, mingling with the fresh air of forgiveness. Yet Daniel's journey had changed him profoundly. The quiet man who once sought only solitude now found strength in community and courage in vulnerability. his eyes opening to new possibilities. His partnership with Claire deepened, their shared trials forging a bond beyond the investigation, a friendship rooted in truth and mutual respect. Together they began rebuilding trust, in themselves and in Millbrook. The hay bales, golden and steadfast, stood witness to a story of resilience, hope, and transformation. And Daniel, once the wrong man arrested, had become a beacon of truth shining in the quiet town's heart. With the evidence in hand, Daniel and Claire prepared to confront the business owner directly. The late afternoon sun cast elongated shadows over the fields, the hay bales standing like silent sentinels, their golden hues deepened by the warm light. The smell of freshly cut hay mixed with the earthy aroma of the soil, grounding Daniel as he rehearsed the confrontation in his mind, the words forming like a shield. His hands trembled slightly, not from fear but anticipation and the weight of what was to come. This was the moment that would either clear his name forever or deepen the shadows around him, a crossroads that would define the future of Millbrook. Claire, clipboard in hand, reviewed their strategy with a sharp, focused gaze. "We have to be careful," she warned, voice low and serious. "He's dangerous, and the town's still divided. One wrong move and this could spiral out of control." Daniel nodded, eyes scanning the familiar stacks of hay. These bales had been his refuge and his prison. Now they would be the backdrop to justice and reckoning. Rufus sat loyally by his side, sensing the tension in the air. Daniel bent down, stroking the dog's coarse fur, drawing strength from the steady heartbeat beneath his palm. "Ready, boy? We're going to finish this." As twilight deepened and the first stars blinked awake, they moved silently toward the barn where the business owner was expected to be. The scent of hay and leather hung heavy in the air, mingling with the faint hum of distant machinery and the cool breath of evening. Every step was measured, every breath taken with purpose. The final confrontation loomed, a test of truth, courage, and the unyielding power of hope waiting just beyond the threshold. Inside the dimly lit barn, shadows danced against the walls lined with stacked hay bales, their golden faces mottled by flickering light. The air was thick with dust and the sweet, dry scent of hay compressed under decades of seasons, mingled with the faint, smoky aroma of tobacco curling from the business owner's lips. His eyes were cold and calculating, a predator's gaze cloaked in practiced charm. Daniel stepped forward, voice steady despite the pounding of his heart. "It's over. We have proof. The crimes, the device, it all points to you." The man's lips twisted into a sneer, dismissive and cruel. "You've got nothing but old hay and rumors," he spat, his words dripping with contempt. Claire appeared beside Daniel, holding out the torn letter and the device like weapons forged from truth. "This isn't just rumors, it's evidence," she said firmly, her eyes locked on the man's. Tension crackled like static electricity as the two men faced off among the hay bales, golden towers that had hidden dark secrets and now bore witness to the final reckoning. Suddenly the business owner lunged toward the device, attempting to destroy it in a desperate bid to erase his guilt. Daniel reacted instinctively, grabbing the man's arm, the rough texture of hay pressing against their bodies in the close quarters. The struggle was brief but fierce, a clash of wills beneath the shadowed rafters. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Claire had called the authorities just in time. The business owner's resistance crumbled as the law intervened, the barn filled with the scent of hay and justice finally served, the air thick with the promise of a new beginning. With the business owner in custody, the town of Millbrook breathed a collective sigh of relief, a weight lifting from its shoulders. Daniel's name was restored, the FBI's mistake acknowledged publicly in a heartfelt apology. The hay bales, once silent witnesses to suspicion and pain, now stood as symbols of truth uncovered and justice served. Daniel walked slowly through his fields, the scent of hay filling the air, a comforting reminder of his roots and resilience. Neighbors offered nods of respect and tentative smiles, their eyes no longer clouded by doubt but shining with renewed trust. Claire stood beside him, her smile warm and proud. "You did it, Daniel. You fought for the truth." He shook his head, gaze resting on the golden stacks that had borne silent witness throughout. "We did it, together." The scars of the ordeal remained, etched deep in memories and hearts, but so did a newfound strength. The hay bales, weathered and golden, spoke of endurance, of secrets kept and finally revealed, of a community's ability to heal. Daniel's journey from wrongfully accused to local hero was more than a personal victory. It was a testament to hope, courage, and the transformative power of truth. Months later, Millbrook's fields swayed gently under the morning sun, a golden sea rippling with the soft breeze. The hay bales, neatly stacked in orderly rows, shimmered gold against the clear blue sky, their rough surfaces glowing warmly. The scent of fresh earth and sweet hay mingled with the soft chirping of birds awakening the town, the gentle rustle of leaves adding a peaceful harmony. Daniel stood on his porch, Rufus at his feet, watching the serene scene unfold. The past still lingered, a shadow behind the warmth, but the present was bright with possibility and quiet strength. Claire joined him, holding a steaming cup of coffee, the rich aroma mingling with the crisp morning air. "The story made the national news," she said with a grin, her eyes sparkling. "They called it the case that shocked the nation." Daniel chuckled softly, a sound of relief and disbelief. "Funny how it all came down to a pile of hay," he mused, the simple truth grounding him. They shared a quiet moment, the hay bales standing tall in the distance, guardians of secrets and witnesses to change. Their golden forms a symbol of endurance and hope. Daniel's journey had transformed him, from the wrong man arrested to a symbol of resilience and truth. Millbrook was no longer just a quiet town, it was a place where hope had taken root and grown strong. As the sun rose higher, casting light over the golden fields and the waking town, Daniel felt a deep peace settle within him. The hay bales whispered of endings and new beginnings, and he was ready to embrace whatever came next.